Hi, it's the what the fuck are we called again?
Family Values.
Family Values podcast. My name's Joe Woods.
My name's Tom Hicks.
I'm not going to do some catchy slogan. It's Friday night. We usually do this on either a Saturday or Sunday morning, but we're sitting here with some beers and it's been a long day of work and I'm half asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So point being, it's been a mixed week in terms of British politics. There's nothing much to touch on in terms of American politics because.
No, there's a couple of stories brewing, but they're in the early stages, particularly Trump. But Trump's revelations, there's a whistleblower going on at the moment, which has to do with Ukraine and allegations of Joe Biden being corrupt.
I only heard this last night, the Trump one, which is basically allegations of Trump giving sensitive or inappropriate information to either the Russian Ukrainian governments.
It's the Ukrainian government, and the allegation is, and it's all allegations at the moment, that Trump asked the Ukrainian government to investigate Joe Biden, or actually investigate Joe Biden's son, to see if there was anything that they could use in the 2020 election.
Dead son?
No, not his dead son. Right. His live son, who works in Ukraine quite a lot.
How very sensitive of me.
Yeah.
But all in all, not a lot to sort of touch on in America. I mean, let's be fair, the culture war's dying a death, and I'm kind of happy of that. Happy about that. So we're going to go sort of straight into... Well, actually, no, first I want to touch on the fact we're fucking off the Germany episode, just because, as usual, the Germans have been fucking boring.
Yeah.
When you want them to be fun, they're fucking boring. When you want them to be calm, they fucking invade Poland. So
yeah,
there's nothing to touch on at the moment. In the context of why we wanted to do that episode has kind of gone out the window. We're now so far removed from it. There's nothing to touch on.
No, just what's going on in Germany at the moment is they're worried about a possible economic slowdown, and effectively the second biggest story there is probably Brexit right now. So we're going to look at that from our perspective rather than theirs, I think.
Yeah, I mean that would kind of make a bit more sense. And also I think YouTube has finally gone up. Demo episode's gone up. I think the first. Okay, for all intensive purposes, the demo episode is the first episode, but it's just so wank I don't want to call it the first episode.
Yeah.
We're now a couple months removed from that, and it's just, I don't like listening back to it, but it's up, and we're putting the rest of the episode so far up in it now, so it's been a bit of a, I won't say a smooth transition, but we are transitioning from SoundCloud, and I know for the very, very few people, which is mainly our friends that listen, we should now have a bigger outreach, hopefully. And Harris Ahmed, the online sensation, and our friend, for anyone who doesn't know him, he has his own YouTube channel. He's a photographer and digital marketer. He's now basically helping us with the channel. He's now sort of part show producer.
He's our technical director.
As well, but also he's away today, so we haven't really been able to utilise him, but he will be around. So let's just go straight into it with revelations that David Cameron, for anyone who doesn't know, he's back, baby. He's emerged from his cave in the south of France for the first time in 3 years,
or from his shed as
well. Spunking down the wall.
Pretty much.
Take it away, Tom.
Well, as I think we were mentioning before the podcast, it's a half apology tour and half it's not my fault tour. With Cameron, he's been giving interviews to Nick Ferrari, he's been giving interviews to the BBC, to ITV, effectively trying to justify what he did, go over where he thinks he went wrong, and all around sort of admitting culpability but giving 10,000 caveats at the same time. It's been interesting, and it seems that there's not a lot of people who are on his side, because Brexiteers don't like him because he campaigned for Remain, and Remainers don't like him because he gave us referendum in the first place. So it's been one of a few uniting things that we're all just sitting around laughing at David Cameron for the last week.
I will say this, big up to Cam Man for essentially confirming what we already knew, which is Johnson is essentially an opportunist leech. And even you've got to agree with this.
Oh, stop the presses on that one.
I mean, the fact that, obviously, yes, we already knew he had 2 different articles written for the, for which fucking papers he worked for again?
The Telegraph.
But it was confirmed essentially that there was a quiverings back and forward between him and Cameron over Well, essentially, the week before he come out for leave, he said, I'd never back leave.
Yeah, he was politicking and planning all the way from it, effectively. And I think Johnson Camp would argue early was waiting until David Cameron got back and he would see what kind of deal and kind of renegotiations Cameron got, which, as we all know, weren't really renegotiations. They were just a couple of platitudes, effectively, to try and seem like there had been a change, but there wasn't really. But to be honest, I think Johnson was always thinking about his political career rather than.
So it's kind of confirmed what we already knew about Johnson, which is again opportunist lead. He's a career politician.
Yeah.
As much as a lot of Leave voters will be blinded by the fact he promoted, he campaigned for Leave, they're blinded by that fact. They kind of ignore the fact that he is the actual meaning of globalist.
Yeah,
and career politician.
Well, he was born in America and he had dual citizenship for a long time, and he's obviously very, very pro liberal economy.
Exactly. He's pretty much. He has the kind of liberal economic, what I call city autistic edge to his kind of economic output, but yet he's just a bit more of a character.
Yeah. He's made the persona of Boris, and I think for a long time, particularly when he was London Mayor, people sort of bought into the persona, and because London Mayor is in a position that has a lot of power, people didn't really look at him too critically. We were just glad to get rid of Ken Livingstone for a bit.
But my actual favourite revelations from these sort of Cameron memoirs, that I think, are they published this week or next?
They've been serialised in a couple of papers, but I think the whole book is being released next week.
Next week?
Yeah.
Okay, but my favourite part of this in terms of Cameron laying out, essentially the layout of his cabinet in regards to Brexit and the campaign, referendum and the campaign, is actually Osborne, it's not Johnson. Basically, Osborne was just... He was... The best way to describe it was he was uncooperative throughout the whole campaign. As soon as Cameron essentially announced that he announced to him that he was going to announce the referendum, and throughout the whole campaign, Osborne was essentially 1 in denial, 2 despondent, and 3 uncooperative.
Yeah, I mean, he's even more pro-Remain and sort of, as you say, city autistic than Cameron on a lot of things.
Yes, yeah.
Although I can say, particularly speaking, for anybody who doesn't know, I do have a bit of financial background, and even though I did vote for George Osborne's Tory party, he was a shite chancellor, quite frankly. He just didn't really do anything.
As a bit of a numpty like me, probably hasn't figured out. Do explain that.
Well, there was a lot that he could have done when it came to easing the transition from the labour-based economy to the austerity-based economy that we had, which would have made the sort of political journey a lot easier. And there was also a lot that he could have done regarding tax, to increase the tax revenues, that he didn't do, that Philip Hammond did as soon as he got in. So Philip Hammond is someone who I disagree vehemently on Brexit, but he is by miles the best chancellor
he's called spreadsheet. He's called spreadsheet Phil for a reason.
Yeah, he kept, even though the economy was effectively stagnant during his time, he kept on managing to reduce the deficit and also increase public spending a little bit, which is, when you think, well, why couldn't George Osborne do that? Which is effectively the sort of, without getting into the nitty-gritty of it, the main way that you can tell that Hammond was a much better chancellor than George Osborne.
Slight side note, and I'm breaking the fourth wall here because, sorry guys, we didn't record last week. 2 weeks ago, I think I might have mentioned it, when the whip was taken away from the I suppose what they're called, the Traitor 21, or whatever the Leave side would call it. But Hammond, how do you feel about Hammond being essentially, let's be honest, kicked out of the party, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, effectively he has been, although there has been a softening of that. Apparently they're allowed to go to the Tory party conference, which is interesting. I think this is yet another example of Johnson trying to play both sides, as it were. But I think it's actually kind of ironic that Philip Hammond has turned into, well, an extremely vindictive person, because or a politician at the same time when Johnson was effectively doing that to his Prime Minister, Theresa May, where he is now trying to do everything he can do to take down Johnson, as Johnson was doing to try and take down the previous administration. Whereas Philip Hammond doesn't have any chance of becoming the leader, so he's only doing it out of...
The differences with Johnson during that period period is Johnson was in and out of cabinet. At times during May's premiership, he was in cabinet. At times, he wasn't. So at least he had a certain amount of power at times to actually, do things that would fuck up the process. Where Hammond he no longer has the whip. He can't even vote in Parliament.
No, and he was very sneaky with his reselection as well, because he confirmed his reselection via an executive committee. Basically, he got a few important people with the Tory party local membership in a room and asked them to confirm him the day before he had the whip removed. So he was very sneaky about that, because that means he's probably going to be in the next Parliament whenever this next general election happens.
What you mean, in 2 months' time?
2 months. It's probably going to be in November. I'd imagine they want to get it out of the way before Christmas, because I can imagine...
And after Brexit.
After Brexit, from a Tory party perspective, definitely.
Okay, I'm going to kind of fuck the format up here, because me and Tom do kind of have a written agenda in front of us, but just because it's come to mind, and I've had this thought in my mind for the last week, I'm now in a place where I do see, whether I want it or not, if we do go to a general election post-Brexit day, whether we leave hard or leave soft, whether there's a deal or no deal, I don't see Johnson surviving the next election.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And maybe it's irrational. There's something just nagging at the back of my mind telling me I can't see Johnson having the majority. And it's not just losing 21 from Parliament. But what do you feel?
I think you've touched on something which is interesting, because he does have an uphill battle to climb. Because I think one thing that we can guarantee about the next Parliament is that he's going to have a lot of seats in Scotland. I think he has a handful up there, which he needs every single seat at this point.
We've always been for the last few years, every election, we've now been borderline Belgian, where we have to end up going into coalition essentially every time. Okay, it's not technically a coalition with a DUP, because that's a supply and demand deal, what the fuck that is.
Yeah.
But whether it... I don't even see there being a small, any kind of majority made up to have Johnson in Parliament. I don't see there being any Brexit Party MPs or many Brexit Party MPs coming to Parliament. So I see Johnson not having the majority, and then maybe being a Lib Dem Labour coalition or Labour Lib Dem coalition.
Well, I think they would. Whatever they're saying now, whatever Jo Swinson keeps on saying, she wouldn't go into coalition with either of them. Whatever she's saying now is
bollocks. It's absolute bollocks.
Yeah.
The idea that Swinson, who by the way, Swinson might be one of the most power hungry party leaders away from Johnson at the moment.
Oh, I think so, and I think that was demonstrated with the Lib Dem Party conference, which I think we're going to move on to.
By the way,
a little bit,
Lib Dem voter.
Yeah.
But I have issues with Swinson, and my main issue being she seems to be a massive narcissist. She seems to be Johnson-esque.
Well, I think she genuinely believes that she can be Prime Minister.
Yes.
Which is odd for a
Actually, I wouldn't even say it's Johnson-esque. I'd say it's Farage-esque.
Interesting.
Because Farage... Okay, to be fair, Farage has even less of a chance of being Prime Minister than Swinson. But Swinson generally, is fighting to be Prime Minister, despite the fact it's pretty much, nil to slim to zero for her being Prime Minister at any point. Yeah. And you see that in Farage as well.
Yes, and with those two, you also see the clear positions where they are at the Brexit extremes, as it were, where one's no deal, one is just completely revoke.
Yes.
But going back to your point about not being able to see Johnson get a majority, I would say that it heavily depends on if the Brexit Party and the Tories can agree on a non-aggression pact. Because if they can agree on a non-aggression pact, and the Brexit Party I reckon they could win 12, possibly even 20 seats up north. If that happens, then I can see basically a very similar type numbers game to what we had with the Lib Dem coalition. And I think he would have even enough Brexit parties, like right-leaning Brexit Party members in Parliament
So what you're saying,
a domestic agenda.
You're saying essentially that the Tories could not there's potentially not standing seats up north.
I think that's the only way, that it's the only clear path he has.
I think in all honesty, I think the reasoning and the strategy makes sense. I don't see it happening.
No, that's the problem, particularly from a Brexit supporting person's perspective. The Tory party have and particularly Boris Johnson has way too much pride to do that, because they have been fighting Nigel Farage for the best part of 3 decades at this point. So they are not going to... Johnson does not want to be the man who effectively caved to Farage. The question is his pride so big that he would cave to Farage if it meant that he'd stayed in number 10? And that's something that it's up in the air at this moment, but I would err on the side of agreeing with you that it's probably not going to happen.
No, I can't see... It's losing face, essentially.
Yeah.
And also, I just can't see, as you said, I can't see Johnson coming to such a deal. Despite how big a pandering prick Johnson is to Leave voters, and to sort of the hard right of the Tory party, I just don't see it. I don't, because to be fair, the ERG are not exactly Brexit Party fans.
No, well, they're full of diehard Tories who really believe in the establishment that is the Tory party. There is almost a religious cult within certain Tory party MPs around the Tory party. And the
point I'm making is the ERG in reality are leading the party at the moment. They, Rees-Mogg, as far as I can see, is the de facto Prime Minister.
Well, they already have a feather in their cap when it comes to dethroning Prime Ministers.
Yes.
So everybody would be wise to be cautious of what power they have at this moment. And I think they're also very much aware that if Brexit gets done, then their power does start to evaporate as well. So they're trying to make as much use of it as they can.
Yes, and I just can't see, because I think there's a lot of members of the Conservative establishment, and I include the ERG in that, who kind of see the Brexit Party as a joke.
Yeah, I think that's true. It takes the risk of underestimating what they can do, because if we remember, one of the main points about the Brexit referendum, particularly the criticisms of Leave voters, was that it was a vote against the establishment because people were pissed off with the general feel of politics at the time.
Yep.
That pissed off motivation is way stronger now than it ever was.
Yeah, particularly to any kind of party allegiance.
Exactly.
I mean, the idea that the grassroots of the Tory party is just glued to the Tory party, we now know is wrong.
Yeah.
We now know that, as happened in 2015, a lot of the grassroots, guess what? They switched to UKIP.
Yeah, and a lot of and even the councillors who were who elected on a Tory party ticket were effectively endorsed the Brexit Party for the European elections. So party loyalties are nowhere near as much as they were, particularly on the right, mainly because of Brexit.
Well, again, Brexit, or the idea of Brexit, at least going back to the 70s, has always been the thing that fucks up British politics, essentially. It throws British politics on its head. Just so anyone from outside the UK doesn't realise, as soon as you bring Brexit into an argument, it becomes part of the political dynamic, or leaving the idea of leaving the EU or our relationship with the EU becomes part of the dynamic, our political situation becomes absolutely thrown in its head. Yeah. So it's how Thatcher lost power in the end of the 80s or early 90s.
Yep. It's one of the things that Tony Blair did so well, and I'm not a massive fan of Tony Blair. Yeah, with his massive majority, he effectively pushed the pause button on the European question throughout his entire time in charge, and it's not a coincidence that the second time David Cameron went into an election, he promised it.
It's not a fucking coincidence that 2010 Cameron comes to power. I mean, to be fair, didn't he promise it in his first in his first election?
He might have done, but he
probably did.
He probably reneged on it. He had a perfect excuse, to be fair, going into coalition.
He certainly did, because the next election was 2015. So I mean, he'd promised it from about 2013. No, he was muting that it was on its way in 2013, and then he announced it in 2015, which was post next election. So
we had some ready-made excuses there, say, with the Lib Dems and also with the Scottish referendum.
I don't think it's a coincidence that after Cameron comes to power in 2010, that you start hearing real noises from Farage and UKIP in around 2012, 2013.
Yeah, and I think as well, particularly with UKIP, UKIP would have been smart enough at the time to realise that the right-wing vote was going to be unified to try and get the Gordon Brown out of number 10, because there was a real push and a real sort of thing of, the Tories deserve another chance back then. And most of the country didn't agree because he didn't even win a majority.
And now 10 years down the line, and
well,
it's pretty much like away from the absolute political dynamic being different over the last few years. Before then, away from austerity, and then before then, obviously the financial crash, which I think I still stick by. I mean, it was a world crash as much as the last Labour administration. Obviously, we're going to fuck around with the coffers. We know that. That's a left. That is a tax and spend sort of left-wing party for you. Okay, and a little bit of more of a softened edge on that because they were a bit more, centrist kind of capitalist.
Yeah.
But at the same token, they are a tax and spend party still.
Well,
and I don't see until 2016 there wasn't a whole lot of difference in the political discussion between 2016 and let's say 97. It felt the same.
No, yeah, and that was one of the main complaints about people, is they're all the same, the Tory party and the Labour Party, particularly during the Blair years. And that was, remember the days when Ed Miliband was thought of as a revolutionary socialist?
Mate, I was literally saying the other day, Miliband feels 10 years ago.
Yeah,
it was only really 4 years ago that he was leader of the Tory Labour Party.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit of a side note, but it is crazy how in your personal life time can feel so quick. Like it does not feel that long ago that I joined the company that I was at, and I've been there for 5 years. But in political terms, it's so long. Oh, it's very strange how time does that.
What was the point I was going to make? It's hilarious that I always say in my personal life, anything 2010 after feels like it was yesterday, but it could be near enough 10 years ago. Where in political terms, I mean, fuck me, 2010 was a different time to 2019. Yeah. We're now somewhere we couldn't have predicted 9 years ago.
Oh no! If you had said to someone 9-10 years ago, the two big political things is that Donald Trump would be the president of the United States and that Britain had voted to leave the European Union, they would have told you that you were crazy.
Can I fucking remind you of the time that Trump was still the presenter of the Apprentice TV show?
Yeah, exactly. At the time he was.
What was it? Was it 2011 or 2012 when him and Bill Maher were in that spat?
It was around that time because, for people who aren't aware, Bill Maher had called Trump an orangutan, or no, he called him the son of an orangutan.
So basically, again, this feels ages ago now. Trump was trying to, he was pushing this agenda that he wants Obama to show his birth certificate to show to prove he's born in America.
Yeah, there's a big movement, the birthers.
Yes, the birther movement. And so Bill Maher hit back with, pretty funny joke. I want to see your birth certificate to show you're not an orangutan.
Yeah.
To be fair, Trump being the slightly, I don't know if it's an egotist or just straight up autistic, but he actually ended up presenting his birth certificate to Maher and then sued him.
He sued him, and Maher fought it in court and won.
Yes.
Because Maher's got he might not have as deep as pockets as Trump's, but he's got a few deep pockets.
Okay, I'm gonna touch on this for a minute. Have you ever heard how fucking Bill Maher lives?
I know he's a married man in his 60s, but that's about as much I know about.
Do you know he so basically, Bill Maher, if anyone doesn't know, is a political comedian that has been around for probably about 30 years, but he really he kicked off on TV about 25 years ago, politically incorrect. Yeah, that show ended in 2001 when he made a statement, or it was all a joke about 9/11.
Yeah.
Well, no, actually made a statement. He made a statement saying, say what you want about the 9/11 terrorists.
Yeah.
They're not cowards. Yeah. Stop saying they're cowards. And look, I agree with him. I hate jihadist terrorists that murder 3,000 people with all my heart. The kind of at the end of the day, they're not someone that throws themselves in a plane into one of the tallest buildings on earth is not a fucking coward.
No, they are a demented individuals in many ways, but cowardice is not something that you can ascribe to them, or such as or even people like the Japanese soldiers in World War II. Kamikaze pilots, or even just the regular foot soldiers who, if those people got shot and they went back injured, or even worse, they had surrendered to the Americans, then they were thought of as like the worst of the worst.
But just not to get off the point, so Maher was he was kicked off in 2001. He carried on with his stand-up career, was massively successful, and I think it was in 2006 he got another show again,
Yep.
which I think it's been on since '06, and it's even more successful than Politically Incorrect, which is Real Time with Bill Maher.
Yeah.
And hey, what I don't always agree with Maher on things. I mean, like, I suppose we're both technically liberals, but there's a lot I don't agree with Maher on, because sometimes I think economically he's not a liberal, he's a socialist.
Yeah.
Or at least he's a Scandinavian socialist, which is not really a socialist, but
He's a very what's the word, sort of social democrat.
Social democrat.
Yeah, but what was interesting in Bill Maher, which sort of puts me off him a little bit. I think he's a very, very funny man. He makes brilliant jokes,
hilarious.
But I think because of the whole Trump thing, when he got sued, he has got such a sour taste in his mouth with Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, he has declared and doubled down on this a few times that he would rather the US go into recession.
No, he wants the US to go into recession.
Yeah.
To basically for there to be a backlash against Trump, and that's fucking dangerous.
It is.
I think we've mentioned this before actually on this podcast.
Yeah.
But the point I was making, Maher actually lives on a trailer or like in a small house, like what's what I'm for? Prefabricated house or trailer on his set.
Really?
Yes. Someone confirmed this recently, but he lives in a small dwelling on his set and doesn't really leave.
You know what? That actually does make sense from what I know about him, because his biggest issue, and fair play to him, it is an important issue, is climate change. He always asks politicians whenever he gets them on about climate change. So if he is trying to minimise his impact on a personal level by living in a small dwelling and living on set so he doesn't have to travel to the set, that's actually him putting his money where his mouth is, as it were.
But it probably doesn't help with his own perception of reality.
Yeah, you're probably right about that, because he only knows the LA sort of studio lifestyle.
He doesn't even know LA. He knows his studio.
Yeah.
If he lives in a dwelling on his studio lot and yet doesn't go off of there particularly often. I know he's in his 60s. You don't really leave your home, leave your house a lot, But why? I don't know. I don't understand it.
It is strange, particularly for a man at this position. Shall we move on to the
sorry, we got sidetracked there.
No, I think you can tell this is a very haphazard
episode.
Podcast.
Yeah, I mean,
because, as you say, it's a Friday night. We've got a couple of beers on the go. So
we're usually, it's a Saturday or Sunday morning, and we're like hyped up on caffeine, and it's sit down. We'll basically sit down, we'll write the agenda, and we do have an agenda in front of us tonight. But in all honesty, I just think it's a different feel and mood tonight.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so Lib Dem conference. Tom, take it away.
Okay, so the Lib Dems had their conference. It was the first one with Joe Swinson as the leader, and they unveiled their big policy, which was a policy that everybody sort of knew, but they have declared it in preparation for the November, December, whenever it is general election, that they will, if they get a majority in Parliament, they will not just have a second referendum, they will just outright revoke Article 50 and keep Britain in the European Union. And this was passed, and with massive applause by the Lib Dem Party members, who are similar to the Labour Party. They have to vote on these policies, and I wouldn't want to be the man who voted against that in the Lib Dem Party conference. It's a very, very brave person to do that.
What was the name of the MP who was... I suppose he's essentially sort of... He's along my lines and like a lot of people's lines, which is you've campaigned for... Well, okay, I didn't campaign for Remain. He campaigned for Remain. He voted Remain, but he accepts the referendum result and would rather leave with a protective deal. Mm-hmm. Same as I would.
Yeah, he's more the Democrat.
And angle. As a Lib Dem voter, particularly, talking to a lot of the grassroots in terms of the activist side of Lib Dems, I'm pretty kind of lonely on that. And I mean, to be fair, I think Swinson's just kind of confirmed... Well, I mean, this was always her intention anyway, and I think it was always Cable's intention, which is...
definitely.
We've always known this, we've always spoken this tone that they would essentially, if they had a majority government, would revoke Brexit.
Yeah, I think it was too early in 2017 to give that policy, and one of the advantages of basically having Cable as an interim lame duck leader would be that he could have this policy to say, we'll have a second referendum, and pretty much no, and I think that if I'm not mistaken, Joe Swinson was his pick to be the next leader.
Yeah.
So I would not be surprised. And
to be fair, I mean, you have to be an MP to be leader of the party, and yet there's a fucking literally a handful of them.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you could get the whole of the Lib Dem MPs into a standard porn, gangbang.
Yeah, well, their membership in Parliament has increased by 50% from defections.
From defections from the Tory party over the last, few weeks?
Yeah, and a couple from Labour via well. Change UK. You've got Chucker, who might be another candidate for a power-hungry man, because he clearly just wants to be the leader of some party.
I used to like Amuna as a politician, and now, I could always kind of tell with his way of communication and his tone that he could be a bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Potentially a bit too slimy and smooth.
Right, yeah.
But
he comes off a bit Sadiq Khan. You know what I mean?
At this point, I think I've got more respect for Khan than Amuna. Again, I am a Lib Dem voter. I know he's left to Lib Dems, but my problem with him is he seems to jump ship a bit too often. Again, as I'm not really someone who cares about allegiance too much, but he seems to be another political opportunist.
Someone who is seeking power wherever it may be, rather than, as long as it's somewhere on the left, he goes to the power.
And I understand it because, from a Brexit perspective, because he represents literally the most Remain constituency in the country, which is Streatham.
Okay.
So basically, for context, a lot of the constituencies in London Borough of Lambeth all are in the top 5 of the most Remain constituencies in the UK.
Yeah, it's a very diverse.
Which is hilarious when you consider the second most Remain constituency in the UK is Vauxhall, which Kate Hoey is the MP for.
Kate Hoey is very funny. It's like I'm. On a democratic level, on a personal level, I quite like her speeches, but on a democratic level, she makes me quite angry because she just does not give a shit what her constituencies think.
Well, look, I kind of semi-understand it when you get kind of Leave MPs or activists who will come out and say you have so many MPs that don't represent their own constituencies. Views on Remain, those MPs will be on Leave, and those MPs will be Remain, and their constituencies will be Leave. All fair and good, but when specifically Hoey has said that, when she's so in Hoey's eyes, it's okay to be a vehemently hard Leave MP in charge of the second most Remain constituency in the UK, yet vice versa can't happen.
Yeah, she has the air of someone who knows that she is quitting politics very soon and is just giving her unfiltered opinion on whatever she actually genuinely believes, which is not the job of an MP.
Here's my 2 cents on that. I believe because Labour knows, or Momentum knows, that you can put a donkey with a red rosette to stand in Vauxhall. It doesn't matter what their opinions on Brexit are, and Vauxhall is a massively Portuguese constituency. She's going to get voted in. The same with Remain Tories in the north.
Well, this is
or in the south.
Well, this is interesting because I would have thought that would have been sort of top of Momentum's list for deselection.
Well, that's exactly it. That's the point I'm getting to, which is she's making movements to step down because she knows Momentum is going to eventually deselect her.
Well, a lot of the local parties are wary of Momentum coming in to do that, but I'd imagine the local Labour Party are just begging Momentum they're collaborating with them to get someone in. And as I say, I don't agree with their politics, but all power to them because people should be represented by...
Which is hilarious because if Kate Hoey was Remain instead of Leave, or she was neutral she tried to stay neutral on the whole thing, like Corbyn, then, or like McDonnell, then Momentum will not go after her, and she'd be one of the darlings of Momentum because she's generally of the harder left.
Oh yeah, she's of the genuine old school socialists who, as you mentioned earlier, don't like the EU because they see it as a Western capitalist bloc. I think we're going to move on a little bit, stay almost down the Lib Dem conference, just to... I
think we're going to flow from Lib Dems naturally into Labour. We're not going to do it like a hard movement, just because it'd be a bit weird. But anyway, I mean, was there anything else we need to say about the Lib Dem conference?
I just want to touch briefly on Guy Verhofstadt's speech.
Yeah.
Where anyone who hasn't seen it, Guy Verhofstadt, who is the chief negotiator for the European Union on the issue of Brexit, gave a speech which he received a standing ovation to at the Lib Dem conference, where he effectively, if not exclusively, declared the European empire and declared the new regime of empires in the 21st century, which it is interesting because he kind of read the wider room, not just the room he's in, because I know a lot of Remain voters like yourself, Joe, who don't like the idea of a United States of Europe, but believe in a trading relationship in Europe.
Yes.
And he effectively just gave Brexiteers a massive flag to wave and say, look at this guy, look what he's saying, he represents the European Union.
Well, Guy Verhofstadt is always a funny one in my mind because he's always been, I think specifically Juncker and Barnier to a certain degree, but always Verhofstadt, he's always been the face of the EU that the Brexiteers get right. Unfortunately, he's one of those really ideologically driven members of the leadership of the EU that really is ideologically driven in this weird breaking down of borders of nation states and forming a European state. For the most part, that's not the drive of the EU. The reality is the drive of the EU. It's an economic union. It's a trade bloc. But you do have these ideologies, particularly from the lowland countries. You have this kind of further integrationists. And normally, they're not that big a deal, but Verhofstadt has, quite a big sway within the organisation and has quite big influences, again, particularly in the Western European nations. By Western European nations, I mean specifically Belgium, Luxembourg, France, Germany. I'm not talking Southern Europe, I'm not talking Central Europe, I'm not talking Britain or Northern Europe. I'm talking specifically the countries that matter to the EU. France, Germany, Belgium, Holland, the core.
Yeah, the original members.
Yeah.
As I say, it's interesting that Guy Verhofstadt gave that speech because it has been effectively replayed all week on Brexiteer radio, as it were, when it comes to Nigel Farage's show on LBC and etc. And it's just it's very strange.
Radio.
Yeah, where he's I don't know what to say apart from that. Couldn't sound basically dancing around with glee and pointing at him, going look and look. But he as you said, he doesn't represent everyone in the EU.
He doesn't represent everyone in the EU.
Yeah,
he represents a weird. It's a weird school of thought that again just persists in specifically those lowland Western European countries within their kind of centre left and centre right political structure.
No, he would get as much hate as he does in Hungary and Poland as he does in the UK.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is specifically the original core members.
Yeah.
Southern Europe, different issue. The UK, different issue. Even Northern Europe, Scandinavia, different issue.
Yes.
And obviously, Central Europe's a whole different fucking ball game just because of their current ongoing, so I suppose not law and order, but their kind of judicial crisis with the EU. So they're constantly countries of the Visegrad group. So Visegrad group are the countries of the EU in the dead centre of Europe that make up part of the old communist East. They are specifically Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovakia. They are 4 countries that are very culturally tied, all traditionally part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The point being, those countries tend to stick together. They tend to be economically and politically tied, and there are odds with the mainframe of the EU at the moment over issues of judiciary in regards to judges having powers taken away and basically just being replaced by executive order.
And this goes to a wider question of how much power does Europe want to have with or without Brexit. This is still a pertinent issue of does the EU have the moral and political and most importantly legal authority to tell countries how to operate on a constitutional level? Which, unless it
kind of prohibits trade or economic activity, then no.
Yeah, and that's what the crux of the issue, and I would imagine that Brexit might be one of the reasons why they're not going for those countries and not trying to implement their vision of what how a nation state should run, because it would just play into Brexiteers' hands at this point. And once Brexit is done, they might take a harsher view on those nations.
I think you could see, if we leave this year or in the next month, and if it's a hard deal, so they don't get our money, which, I mean, hopefully doesn't happen. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we do own that money. I think you might see the chance of the EU kicking out some of those Visegrad troublemaker countries, because they might be seen, not Poland, because Poland's too economically important,
particularly Germany.
But Hungary is a bit of a lame duck.
And if they kicked Hungary out, it would really be a problem for Hungary, because if you look at a map, Hungary is dead
in Central Europe.
So this is the thing. Hungary might be the most Eurosceptic country apart from Britain. And they don't have a choice to leave.
Not quite correct. The population disagrees with EU actions in Hungary in regards to, again, the judiciary and the way the EU treated Hungary during the migrant crisis a few years ago. But in general, they'd rather, like, if you were to poll Hungarians on whether they leave or stay part of the EU, it'd be hard majority stay, because economically there's too much lying on it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But if Hungary was an island off the coast of France, would that be the same? And they had everything else.
Again, it depends on economy. You have to remember, Hungary's a recipient nation of EU funds.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think of that. Yeah,
that's okay. Economically is not the best way to put it. Fiscally,
we got it on that.
Hungary is too reliant on the EU. Hungary's not where it was in the 90s in regards to being seen as this the growing hope for Eastern Europe. So when the Iron Curtain fell in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s, you had the states that were seen as going to be the next powerhouses in Eastern Europe, and in part, everyone got it wrong. They saw Ukraine and Hungary. Ukraine, I mean, you couldn't be further from the truth.
No, you really
it is by far one of the poorest countries now in Eastern Europe, with huge issues with corruption, crime, guerrilla warfare. I
would imagine that stems from the pro-Russian, anti-Russian thing. I mean, that's the big issue there. It's sort of like our Brexit issue, but that's been going on ever since the Soviet Union collapsed.
It's geopolitics. And then you have Hungary, which was very business-friendly to the West during the 90s, and it still is. It's part of the EU now, of course it is, but certain other cities and countries within the EU are seen as a bit more business-friendly and a bit more attractive. One, because just generally better standards of living for foreign staff who'd have to go and work there. So places like Prague in the Czech Republic or Ljubljana in Slovenia. And wages are just higher there and the standard of living's higher.
Or even somewhere like Estonia, which has that budding
Tallinn
tech sector.
in Estonia, which is another one of the other richer countries of Eastern Europe. Again, no one got right in the 90s. No one thought Estonia to be one of the top rich countries of Eastern Europe. Just for a bit of context to this, Slovenia, for example, and Estonia both outdo the GDPs of most of the Southern European countries in terms of per population GDP.
As you say,
and Czech Republic, actually,
being that close to Russia, no one would have predicted that in the 90s. It's crazy. I think we're just going to lightly touch on the revelations of this week from Mr. Corbyn.
My bad.
No, it's a rambling episode, I'd say. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but
call me the rambling man. Who the fuck sang that again? I can't remember. Anyway, probably.
But Jeremy Corbyn has come out with his new decisive Brexit policy, which is he's going to be decisively neutral in all things, and he will be the neutral Prime Minister who will stay above the fray, which, as everybody's sort of looking at him, Labour Party, non-Labour Party, is sort of thinking...
So in other words, Corbyn is telling us what we've known for the last 3 fucking years, which he's not taking a position on this.
Pretty much. And at least he's coming out and saying that as opposed to trying to play every single position.
So, I would rather that, but at the same point, fucking resign.
Well,
You don't deserve to be.
No.
You don't deserve to be leader of Her Majesty's opposition if you don't have a position on the biggest political dilemma for 300 fucking years in this country.
And you don't deserve to be the leader of a party that 90% of but not 90% of the members, if not the voters, are virulently Remain.
Is this 70%?
I think it was 70% of the voters.
Oh, okay. 90% of the membership.
90% of the membership are very, very proud. I don't know how, and he clearly does not like the European Union. He clearly
we
still
know
hates
we
them.
know Corbyn is a vehement Eurosceptic.
Yeah.
Just take the position on it.
Yeah.
Just take a position one way or the other. Leave Remain. Maybe you could come out and say, "Hey, I've always been a Eurosceptic, but for the sake of my party, I believe in Remain now, or for the sake of my country, or now say I now believe in coming to the best solution over a deal." Just fucking take a position. You can't, as Her Majesty, the leader of Her Majesty's opposition, come out and say we're not taking a position. Because I'm not taking a position.
It's an insult to Remain voters because you're not representing their views, and what he's proposed.
It's an insult to fucking Parliament.
Yeah, exactly, and it's also probably an insult to Leave voters because what he's effectively said is we're going to have the choice between a very, very soft Brexit or Remain, and most Brexit voters don't want that. So don't want either of those options, and it still feels like you're sort of getting the option out of the window. And he just seems like he's trying to do everything he can to.
I don't think I've made this point particularly clear on this podcast so far, but I really don't like Momentum. But let's be fair, Momentum is pulling the strings on Corbyn as leader of the party. Why do they stand for this?
Yeah, why don't they just go for somebody else? Because he clearly does not represent the Momentum grassroots.
I mean, the problem is they get rid of him. I mean, they can't go for McDonnell because McDonnell's more of the same. He won't take a position on Brexit again because he doesn't. He's a hard, he's a hard leaver.
He's smarter at hiding it, though. I'd say McDonnell.
Well, McDonnell just doesn't, for the most part, doesn't comment on Brexit.
Yeah,
he doesn't have to
exactly.
Because he's not leader of the opposition.
Yeah.
He's Shadow Chancellor. He doesn't need to at this point in time. So it's like, okay, they're not going to choose McDonnell because McDonnell will be more of the same. Who would they go for? And they're not going to go for someone centrist. They're not going to fucking, pull old chubby West Streeting out of the gutter and...
Oh, God, no.
Don't get me wrong, I don't mind West Streeting. I don't see them... I don't see Momentum choosing a centrist.
Nah, he's my local MP, Wes.
Do you fall into Ilford North?
Yeah, we're just in Ilford North.
Oh, fuck about, okay.
Yeah, which is interesting because that means it's a swing constituency, so my vote actually might count next time.
For context, I'm sitting in Tom's flat, which looks out one way... Okay, no, it doesn't look out, but in one direction you've got Chigwell, underneath Woodford Bridge. You go under, you're at Chigwell. You look left, out the window, you're at Charlie Brown's roundabout, which is the start of Ilford. So, but this side of the road, I wouldn't expect to be Ilford North.
No, it is. I've looked it up and confirmed it a few times.
So your local MP is West Streeting?
Yeah.
Not the worst constituency. He's supposed to be quite a good constituency MP.
He's much better than the guy I used to have, especially the guy we had previously. Which
was
John
Cryer.
Who was at the centre of the expense scandals and got quietly dismissed by the Labour Party in 2000 and was it 9 or 10? 2010 referendum election.
But the point we're making is, I don't see who Momentum would go for if they were to drop Corbyn.
No, they're not going to go for someone like someone who's hard to remain but also quite socialist. Like who has that?
But that doesn't really, yeah, I mean, I don't even know where Abbott stands on Brexit, to be honest.
I think she's quite particularly giving her constituency. She must
because she's not. Remain. Is she really a socialist though? I think she's. I think the best way to describe it is she's a niche issue MP. I think because specifically. Her constituency, which is Hackney, is traditionally a very black area of London. I think she's kind of seen as some separate from normal left-wing divides because she's more there to represent the black vote of Hackney.
True.
Or the black vote. She's there to represent the kind of the black population more than she's there to represent the left-right divide.
Oh, I can see it. So they're similar to the representatives in America who represent some of the districts.
So traditionally, like David Lammy as well in Tottenham... Yeah. She's kind of seen as representing more the black vote than actually represent a left or right position.
Yeah, which there needs to be someone who fills that position because otherwise you need someone to speak up for a particular ethnic minorities, because otherwise it's very hard for a white politician to come across that as genuine.
It's like Sadiq Khan in Tooting. Tooting's a very Asian area, so again, naturally Khan would be MP for that area, because again, like Sadiq Khan, again, he seems a little bit more economically left-wing, because you can never really figure out Abbott's actual economic leanings. She can't go full socialist just because in big part black people are not really socialists, but also it's a tricky one because black voters tend to be in London particularly socially liberal on some things and then very conservative on other things,
particularly
so it's a bit of it's not quite the same dynamic as walking as being the MP for a standard Labour London constituency.
And that mainly stems from the fact that the black population in London is very second, third generation immigrants, so they have a very religious background, a lot more than their American counterparts.
Where if you look next door, directly next door at Corbyn's constituency, which is Islington North, it's not specifically black, it's generally more mixed between Jewish, Turkish, white, black, everyone really, and he doesn't need to toe a specific line or represent a specific ethnic group. So, he doesn't anyway. He's just a white guy from the Shires. And he's a socialist. That's what he represents. He's an old school socialist.
Which is probably the if not the majority, definitely a polarity of that constituency.
So the point we was making on that is momentum. Who do they? That's actually a really interesting one. We should at some point play a game of Labour leadership charades, where we should try and pick who would be the next Labour leader post, and it will happen because at the end of the day, the next election either way, I think it's most likely. Hang on, I'm contradicting myself here. I was going to say it's most likely that Corbyn's going to lose the next election, but even though earlier on this episode I did say that I don't see Boris surviving the next general election.
I can't see him getting more seats than Boris.
No, I can't. No way do I see that. No. So the question is, who is the next Labour leader?
Yeah, and I would imagine, and it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be interesting how the National Executive Committee, if they try and change the rules for this, because I think that a lot of the grassroots Labour membership are probably quite unhappy with the socialist wing, and they might think that if they pick a die-hard Remainer, but also quite, to use an unspoken term for the last 10 years, quite the Blairite, they have a much better chance of getting into power.
Please get a Blairite back in power in Labour, so Labour's actually won a normal centrist party again. That actually had a very successful fucking premiership under Blair. We tend to forget that now because of Iraq.
Yeah. Very, very popular, even considering Iraq. He still won a couple of an election after that. Yeah. But I would say that a couple of things that are guaranteed, but were not guaranteed, but it's heavily that it would be a Blairite. And one thing which I think is extremely likely is that it will be a woman. Because
most of the strong Blairite women have now left the party or have been sacked from the party. So De Pietra, Luciana Berger. Who do you see? I mean, okay,
you got Cooper.
I suppose. Cooper, yeah, good point. Fuck me, because she's kind of seen as the mother of the Labour Party, really.
Yeah, she has been there for a long time. She stood last time, but
she was going to be mother of the house, I suppose. But yeah, is she still kind of set to be next Speaker of the House?
That's Harriet Harman you're thinking of.
Well, yeah, I mean, both Harman and Cooper have both been cited.
I didn't know Cooper had been cited. I know Harman's pushing for it
along with Meg Hillier, which I don't really understand why that would be.
Well, Harman's pushing for it very hard, and I think that she effectively has the nod from John Bercow as well, because her local constituents are not very happy about it.
What constituency is she again? Somewhere in Richmond. I can't fucking remember.
It's somewhere in London. Yeah, but they're quite unhappy because of obviously when you become speaker, you really don't get a vote. You don't get a voice.
Most speakers now tend to be in for over a decade. I.e. with Bercow. So I know the reason I know Bercow most likely is stepping down after October is because as an MP, not just a speaker, his speakership has to be up this year, and it's probably I think it's going to be up around the time of Brexit.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, Buckingham, which is his constituency, is one, a Leave constituency, and two, once his speakership is over, his constituency can vote again. And you can imagine how pissed off his constituents are.
Yeah.
They've not been able to vote for 10 years.
Yeah. But I would not be happy if I had a speaker that was representative. I mean, it's almost thinking that maybe the Speaker of the House shouldn't even be an elected representative. Maybe they should just be almost a civil servant in a regard. Because then
a civil servant or someone from the Lords, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, that would actually be a better idea. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's so much hatred for civil servants, which it just makes no sense. It's just people who work for the government. I don't really see the hatred for them. The reality is, someone from the Lords who has a lot of clout would always be a good idea.
Yeah, but I just think it's difficult, and it's not just the Speaker; it's the four deputy speakers as well.
Hang on, bad idea. I've just had images of of Speaker Heseltine. Oops, no, sorry, I retract my statement.
Yeah, Speaker Sugar. That would be a good one.
Actually, to be fair, he'd be able to fucking burn people better than Burko ever could.
That would be true. You wouldn't want to mess with him on that regard.
And don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against Burko. I actually think Burko's been a great speaker, apart from when he became a bit... But, again, I'm a Remain voter, but even I think he became a bit biased over the last couple of years, particularly post-Johnson.
Yeah, he despises Johnson, you can tell.
Yeah.
Which is odd, because you shouldn't be able to tell. And he's... By all accounts as well, he's not a very nice man in person, from what I've heard.
Just to kind of bring this back to a point, what do you see coming? Is there anything to take away from this statement from Corbyn?
I would say that I kind of have a begrudging a little bit more respect in one way, because I think that he's had enough of lying to the public.
Yeah.
Because just to see the look on his face whenever he's called out by Boris or even Theresa May before for being someone who used to vote, who used to be very Eurosceptic and that's now was for a time being seemed like quite pro Europe.
Yeah.
He really didn't like doing that, and I think he's just decided I can't outright support Remain anymore. So I have a bit more begrudging respect for that, but at the same time, I just don't know how you can justify being the leader of the Labour Party when you have that stance. The leader of the Labour Party should be pro-Remain. They just should.
I don't necessarily believe that. I believe if you are the so-called principled man that Corbyn is, you stick by your principles. Or even if you gain new principles, in the words of fucking Groucho Marx. I have principles. But if you don't like those ones, I have others. If you have these new set of principles, which is, I'm Eurosceptic, I don't believe in this, this body of free trade between, cross-national parties. But I respect the wishes of the party in general, and I will go what the party thinks. I don't even mind if you say that. Just have a fucking position.
Yeah.
You cannot be Her Majesty's opposition and not have a position.
No, I would definitely say that we might disagree on the semantics, but the general feeling of it is effectively he's just not really the leader of the opposition. He's just there.
And do you know what happens when you sit in the back of the car and you don't have you don't have an opinion? You just hear, "Oh shit! I shot mine in the face." Do you know what I'm referencing there?
I do not. Sorry.
Pulp Fiction. You ever seen Pulp Fiction?
I have indeed, but not for a long time.
When fucking begin the film when Travolta and Samuel Jackson pick up that guy Marvin they've been trying to track down.
Oh yeah.
And they throw him in the back of the car.
That one.
That's it.
Yeah.
They're trying. It's a disagreement between Jackson and Travolta about burgers.
Yeah.
And Travolta turns round to Marvin, who they've got captive in the back of the car. He has his gun pointed towards him.
Yes.
And he goes, "Well, you got to have an opinion," and the gun just goes off and shoots this guy Marvin in the head.
The next 20 minutes cleaning up that shit.
And the point I'm making there is, fucking have an opinion, or momentum's going to shoot you in the head.
Yeah, and it's going to be ugly because inter-party violence, as we've seen in the last few months of the Tory party, is never pretty, and it never benefits the party that's having it.
And by the way, momentum will eventually shoot Corbyn in the head, and what I mean by that is they will eventually get him to step down.
Well,
This is becoming too big a sticky wicket for them.
Definitely, he has to either become Prime Minister or he steps down. There's no way, even if he gains some seats in this next election, that he remains Labour leader.
I've just seen images of fucking David Miliband coming down a red carpet.
David Miliband, if he stands again, I would say that people would welcome him, because that must be the biggest regret for a lot of people that they didn't put up David Miliband, because I would think
overread. They
yeah.
should have definitely put up David overread.
Yeah, they had I reckon they had a real chance of winning in 2015 if they had put David up.
But do you think, because there seemed to be this big push to make Ed to look like this socialist that he wasn't, do you think there was generally a new there was new sort of yearning within the Labour Party membership the membership within the grassroots for an actual socialist person?
The election of Jeremy Corbyn proves that, I would say. And I think Ed was pushed into that position that he wasn't uncomfortable with, but at the same time he would have been probably preferred to go in the Blair mould, but it was just completely toxic in the early 2010s.
As I said to a friend of mine yesterday, couldn't they have just fucking voted for Burnham? Couldn't they have just got Jason Manford in? Like, if he...
Jason Manford.
Sorry, he reminds me of Jason Manford in every way.
He's mayor of Manchester now, so that's very, very apt.
Yes, but, like, can they just fucking vote for Burnham? Can they just not add some fucking... some centrist in who's generally quite liked?
I know a lot of people that like Burnham.
I like Burnham.
He's quite a friendly guy.
I'm not a Labour voter, I like Burnham.
Yeah.
You know, he generally seems alright. He seems to be a pretty good... pretty caring mayor for Manchester, you know.
Well, he's still a young chap, so there's definitely still time. And hey, being the mayor of a major city has proved quite fruitful in the last decade, so we'll see where that goes.
Right, shall we pull the plug on this?
I think it is about that time.
Sorry for today's episode. I'm fucking tired. I think originally we were going to do this sometime in the week, but because we couldn't do last week due to work commitment. Last weekend due to work commitments.
Yeah.
It's been interesting, but to be fair, I probably would have been even more fucked up midway through the week than now.
Yeah, I think the relief of having the weekend just ahead of us has made it a little bit more relaxed. And,
well, I'm working next 2 days, so...
of course.
Yeah, but it is what it is, and like I said, this is now all being uploaded to YouTube, so it's now all easier access, and it's just a better platform. I'm not going to say what I was going to say there, but I just don't think SoundCloud is the best platform for us or for podcasts in general.
No, YouTube is definitely the way that we can reach most people, and it's way more usable, I would say.
Shall we have a look forward to next week?
Yeah, well, as much as we can with the speculation.
Right, speculation on next week. So the Supreme Court ruling, I think, is it comes to a ruling tomorrow.
They said early next week.
Okay.
Thursday when they adjourned. So that'll be most likely Monday
so
or Tuesday.
We're probably recording. Okay, so it'll be Monday next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll be able to comment on all the fallout, because whatever the judgment is, there will definitely be fallout.
I mean, in all honesty, let's predict the judgment. The judgment is there's going to be no proof to basically prove that Johnson did anything wrong.
Or they might even go further and say that the court shouldn't really be ruling on a political matter.
I think there was kind of... I mean, you could kind of tell the judge who's taken this case basically stated on... What day was it? Tuesday? That from the start of this hearing going forward, that this court will not decide the outcome of Brexit. So essentially, I think they've put their cards down on the table. We're just not trying to rock the boat one way or the other.
No,
we do not want to hold up Parliament or play around with the political system in any way. So I think in reality, Johnson's safe on this.
Yeah, they're not going to order Johnson's resignation from the bench. No. And this is a good thing, because the last one we want is another element of politics, another branch of government getting into politics.
One thing, going a bit off topic, I think we're going to cover on next week. I think we should do a little expose. Fucking hell, I'm not saying that word. We're going to have a little segment looking into how the culture wars in America has died off.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing, and I think just touching on that, a good example of that would be the recent I say controversy in air quotes because it isn't really a controversy, I don't think, of Justin Trudeau and his blackface, where I think most people are like, well, that happened.
What's the issue?
It happened loads of times. And I think this is because it happened to the king of wokedom, Justin Trudeau.
Yeah.
It's so good because
I was trying to make this to a friend of mine today who is very much a liberal and is quite an admirer of Trudeau. And I said, look, I've got nothing against Trudeau. I just roll my eyes at times when he does the kind of the for lack of a better term, the SJW kind of language policing, because he's the only leader I can think of that does that.
Yeah,
he actually speaks sometimes in a manner as if he was a fucking grassroots member of the DSA.
Yeah.
So I mean, for example, correcting a woman giving a speech in the Canadian Parliament. When she said mankind, I think you'll find it's
people kind. Yeah.
And I mean, look, again, it's mildly annoying. You roll your eyes at it, but I don't particularly hate the guy. I've got nothing really against him. But the point I was making is that a friend of mine said he saw absolutely nothing wrong in what Trudeau did. And I don't see anything wrong, but I said I want to play devil's advocate here. If Farage did it, what would you say? Oh no, it's not the same because there's intent and we know where Farage stands. I said, well, there you go, this is a bias. And again, I don't like Farage and I have nothing against Trudeau. I'm just making a point, you have a bias. Yeah.
And we've got to call out, particularly as myself, as a Conservative-leaning voter, you've got to call out the leader of the Canadian Conservative Party for trying to use this for political purposes in the exact same way that most Conservatives have been complaining about for the last decade.
I've been reading up on the Canadian political system recently, particularly basically they've got three parties just like in the UK, but the difference is they've got a Liberal Party, we don't have a Liberal Party, we have a Liberal Party. So it goes, the biggest party is the Liberal Party, which is kind of centre-left, capitalist, liberal, so I suppose kind of similar to our Lib Dems. You've got the second party, which is the Conservative Party, I suppose pretty fucking similar to the British Conservative Party, as in, I suppose it protects certain elements of the public sector.
Yeah.
Just like it here.
Yeah, it's not the Republicans.
It's not the Republicans. And then you've got the third party, which is the New Democrats, which despite their name, they're actually, I suppose, they're the Canadian equivalent of the current and older Labour Party.
Yeah, they were the ones who were the main opposition party, fighting with the Canadian Tory Party for a long time, whereas Justin Trudeau really gave the Liberal Party in Canada a kick up the arse when he became the leader.
Which kind of makes sense, because I don't really think of Canada as a kind of hard left country. I think of it as being liberal but not hard left.
Yeah, they very much lead the world in political correct issues for most part, but I think that this is the whole scandal is just going to make a lot of people look back on things like the Kevin Hart instance and a lot of the stuff that has been on the culture.
Do you see, because I know the general elections coming up in the next few weeks over there.
Canada.
Do you actually see Trudeau being forced not to run in the end?
No.
Or do you see him stepping down?
I don't see him stepping down. I think it's going to blow over, particularly because his supporters are going to forgive him because they're his supporters, and Conservatives will be looking at the bigger picture and thinking, well, we really don't want to be talking about these issues anymore, so if we give him a pass, then anytime anyone ever brings us up against our politicians, we can just say, well, Justin Trudeau wore blackface. So it's actually a massive, massive long-term political win for Conservatives in the so-called culture war, I would say.
So there's some things to unpack and diagnose next week. We can see where Canada's gone with this situation. Yeah. We can look at the ruling on the Supreme Court. I actually don't think that's going to be particularly exciting. I know you think there's going to be fallout to look at around it. I don't think that's going to be a particularly exciting kind of event, just because... I mean, what could really come... Yeah, you'll get some Remain MPs in Parliament that might, throw their arms up. But away from that, what else can you do?
Well, yeah, that's pretty much the situation. But we'll have to see. And I would say never say it's going to be a boring week in British politics, because lately we just don't know.
There's no such thing at the moment.
No, it's almost like you just roll your eyes at how ridiculous it is most of the time, which is just very British, I would say.
Alright, so hopefully next week we're going to be of better mind, body and soul, and probably jittery on caffeine. So see you until then.
See you later.
Bye.